Hello, you. I'm Daniel, and this isn't Christopher Tilley.
I am not Chris Tilley. I am Alex Simmons. I guess I am the Bruce Wayne to his Batman, or maybe the Clark Kent to his Superman, or maybe he's just Wonder Woman. I don't know.
I thought you were his PA.
Maybe. I'm Oracle. I oversee everything here.
If you didn't already realise, you're watching the superhero show. Now, last week we were both at Gamescom, and you saw the most recent build of Batman Arkham Knight.
Yeah.
The concluding part to Rocksteady's
Rocksteady's
Arkham trilogy.
Yeah.
So we're going to discuss whether we think it's maybe the definitive superhero game, and you think it might be based on what you've seen.
Well, I definitely think that the Arkham series as a whole is the definitive superhero game franchise. There's nothing else that's been as consistent across the board.
Should we just dig into that? What was it about Arkham Asylum when it came out? Because I remember downloading the demo for Arkham Asylum. It came on at Xbox Live. Just, back when you had Xbox Live, you used to download all the demos when they came out because I didn't have any games.
Yes.
And I thought, I bet you this is rubbish, because it was a Batman game. And you went in with those preconceptions and you went, I remember thinking, blimey, this is actually really good.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, it's all about you want to feel like you are Batman, and that's what those games have done brilliantly from start to finish. Yeah. You are obviously mega tough. You are susceptible to kind of, being kicked to 7 shades out of you. But I think, right from the start, you can take on a room full of bad guys and win if you know how to do it properly. And that's the whole point of being Batman.
So the series has changed over time. Arkham City didn't make it fully open world. It kind of did, but within set limits of Arkham City that have been walled off.
Yeah.
Gotham City have been turned into Arkham City. Now, Arkham Knight completely blows the doors off, doesn't it?
Yeah, as it were, yes. So the bit that I've seen is set in obviously a smaller part, but it's Gotham and beyond, effectively. So the game area is going to be much bigger. But the best thing about it is, I think, it's obviously a return to Rocksteady. Last year's game was developed by somebody else.
Arkham Origins. It was developed by Warner Montreal, I think.
That's right, yeah.
And it's kind of a weird one. It's kind of, obviously the Arkham brand is kind of premium now, and it's special to Warner, and they wanted to get another game out in between the wait. But Rocksteady are very clear, this is the concluding part to their trilogy. Yeah.
And I think the problem with last year's game is that it was decent, but it felt like somebody else was making it. It didn't feel like it was being driven by the people who gave birth to this franchise and followed it all the way through. Arkham Knight feels like it's that game because they've made some innovations and actually feel like that they deserve to be in the game. And obviously the big one is the Batmobile. Now, when I started to play that game, when I first heard about the Batmobile, I just thought this game is not suited to that kind of thing because you never ever run around on the ground in Batman, but actually with the Batmobile it feels very, very natural, and importantly it controls just as tightly as Batman does, whether he's swinging from the rafters or taking on bad guys.
What I thought was interesting about the Batmobile is it doesn't feel like the game changes entirely once you step inside the car. It feels like it's almost a sidekick and an extension of Batman's own abilities. So for instance, you can open doors using the grapple gun on the Batmobile in some instances, using the weight of the Batmobile to solve puzzles, but you can also attack people using the Batmobile. So it feels like an extension of Batman, which is what the Batmobile is all about, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it is taking a lot of the kind of pedigree and the heritage that have been in previous games, like the way you solve puzzles, the way you take on enemies, and you do it very much in, as you say, in much the same way as you do in the Batmobile, rather than it feeling like, well, that's the kind of Batman on foot section, this is the Batman in the Batmobile section. And even the short period of time that I played it for, you're going around very tight corners in a very limited space, but the Batmobile is so tight the way it handles that it just feels like, I am an absolute badass in this Batmobile.
Okay, so I'm really sold on the idea of an open world Gotham City with more verticality, more gadgets, having the Batmobile. But I'm one of those people who really prefer the kind of narrative drive of the original Arkham Asylum to the more kind of open-ended stuff of Arkham City. Yeah. Because I just followed the story through Arkham City, and that's what I kind of really, what really satisfied me. Do you have any more inklings about what is happening in Arkham Knight and what the narrative through line is to help players?
So obviously the ultimate bad guy here is Arkham Knight. We know very little about him. He looks a bit like Batman.
So this is an original character created and Rocksteady have made with DC Comics.
I believe so, but there's definitely a hint of like Azrael from the Nightfall series in there. But again, I'm sure that we will find out a lot more about that as the game goes on. We probably won't find out.
I think there's going to be a third act unmasking of that character, and it'll be someone we already know from the series or a famous Batman character.
But obviously, you know, beneath him, pulling the strings is Scarecrow, one of my favourite bad guys from the franchise so far, because I thought, you know, those levels in
Scarecrow
Arkham Asylum
underwent
were
a bit of
amazing.
a renaissance with Batman Begins and then Arkham Asylum. He was like, I think, still the most memorable part of that game that's what everyone talked about. And obviously in PS4 is getting specific Scarecrow missions that kind of draw upon those levels in Arkham Asylum.
Yeah, because I think, again, one of the problems with the previous Arkham game was that, you know, the bad guys were just, right, you've got to punch them to death or you've got to fight them. Whereas, you know, the missions with Freeze and, you know, the clever stuff is the thing that draws me into those games. I want to see more of that
It's
kind
using
of stuff.
Batman's intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just, you know, 3 hits and they're down. It's something different. And actually, that was my biggest disappointment about Asylum, was it was fantastic all the way through, and the Joker boss was a little bit cheap, I thought. So hopefully they're going to, you know, right those wrongs and do something clever.
So it's a lot of the same team. It's still Sefton Hill at the director's
That's right.
seat. Paul Dini's left there, who's the writer.
Yeah.
I think Sefton Hill's got more involved with the story work.
Yeah.
But you're kind of hopeful for the narrative of the game?
Well, I think the key thing is in Arkham City, the reason why you probably didn't go and do that other stuff around the city was because there was no real reason to.
Because everyone would have been evacuated.
Absolutely. And also, it was the same thing. I got to a point where the city wasn't that interesting to explore. There weren't that many reasons for me to just hang out in the city, unlike an open world game like GTA, where that is the reason to exist. So I'm hoping they can bring a bit more life to Gotham and its surroundings, which, you know, looking at its kind of pedigree, I think they will. But, you know, these guys know what they're doing. They've lived and breathed Batman now for 5 years or whatever it's been. I think they will deliver a brilliant game, and it's, you know, I can't wait.
Wow. So what we're going to do in a few weeks' time, I think we're going to do an episode on the best superhero video games of all time. And Arkham series is going to be definitely up there.
Yeah.
I really like the Spider-Man 2 game on PS2. I think that's one of my favourites, Marvel Ultimate Alliance. So we want to hear from you. So if you email in IGN_UK feedback, is that right, Rich? Put it up on the bottom. Your favourite superhero video games, we'll go through them in a few weeks' time and try to figure out which is the best video game based on a superhero property.
Absolutely.
But until then, we'll see you later.
Adios.